I just purchased a Harvest Right. It's the small version, even though a few people have told me that you might as well go with the medium. You're going to be disappointed with the small. I can see that, but right now it works out pretty well for me. It has been something that I've been debating for a long time because of the price range. And I'm going to go through some of the pros and cons that I have been battling with over the course of the last, I don't know, 6 months, maybe even longer than that before it became this thing that I just really, really wanted and started saving up for and then finally pulled the trigger. But the benefits of it, of long-term food stores, it just makes things so much easier. And I'm going to go through these here, but it makes things so much easier as far as inventory and rotation and what you can store and the cost savings and all of those different things. It just makes it so much easier when, as far as rotation and inventory, you don't have to think about things as much as you would if they expire every year, every 2 years, or even 5 years. If you got 20 years, it's not such a big deal if you have to wait a little bit. The first one, I'll just put up these. I'll start going through these pros and cons that I had when I was deciding on whether or not to purchase a freeze dryer, when I was in the process of basically talking Lisa into it. And it's a little bit easier said than done, because Lisa knows that I turn into a teenager that wants to, a teenager that wants to borrow the parents' car. That's what I turn into when I want something. I can figure out a million ways to justify it, and my mind is already set on it, and she kind of knows that. So, but at any rate, the first con right here is one that probably is a big one for everyone. The upfront costs. Freeze dryers can be expensive. Prices for the small unit that I got, $2,300 up to $3,600 for a large unit. This initial investment is what, turns a lot of people off. And it, some families, it's just not feasible. But it really, and as I go through these, you'll see it really does save some money. Lisa's in the chat, said, yeah, he does. Yeah, I turn into a little child when I want something. I just don't, I don't stop bugging her. But this is the main hurdle. This is the one. If there were other options, they have a layaway plan. That's fine. I hate using credit cards, so I wasn't going to do that. So it really is one of those things in the beginning that is like, man, I'd love to have one, but it's just so expensive. And from what I've been doing recently, it's something that I'm glad I bit the bullet, and I'm glad I did it. So the cost is the big one right there. The cost is the main factor, I think, for everyone as far as why they haven't pulled the trigger on getting a Harvest Right. But I'll tell you what, it's just, I'll go through this with the pros. I don't want to give anything away, but the next one I've got here of the cons is they require electricity to operate during the freezing and drying cycles, quite a bit of electricity, which can increase your electricity bills. Mine, I've done some averages. I've got a kilowatt meter plugged into the wall. Mine is closer to the $3 range per batch, and that is a 24 to 30 hour batch. It cost me about $3 to do a load, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you've been running it nonstop like me, I have a feeling my electricity bill is probably going to be $50 more at the end of the month. But if you just run it a couple times a week, you're looking at $6-7 a week. So $28 on your utility bill. Yes, it's higher, but the benefits you get from this, I think, outweigh the cost of that, because, like I said, with the food storage, and we'll go through more. I'm going to go through all the pros here before I even get to them, but the benefits far outweigh all of these cons. So the third one, the reservation I had after I started looking into this, was the space you need. Because you don't just need the space for the freeze dryer. That's really not that much. It's sort of the size of a mini fridge, but you need space to put the pump next to it. You need space. You have to put a bucket, this hose right there on the left. You have to put a bucket down there to catch the water. So you need, and you need a good room with good ventilation. I've heard some people, they put them in their garage. I didn't want to do that because of temperature swings. So I ended up going in a spare room. But at any rate, the space needed is one of those considerations. Where are you going to put it? If you have room for it in like a laundry room or in a basement, anything like that, you've got to figure that out before you go out and make that purchase. So that's another one that it was one of the cons on my list. All right, number 4 here. It's a time-consuming process. It's a whole lot easier to just go out and buy some prepackaged long-term food. It's basically you put your order in, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about the cooking process. You don't have to worry about the freezing, the dehydrating or the freeze drying, all of those different things. The packaging, the Mylar bags, the O-tubes, orbiters, none of that. You just you just buy the food and you put it on your shelf. The difference is it tastes so much better than any prepackaged food you're going to get. So also with the freeze drying process, it's not something that just you stick it in there and a few hours later you've got your freeze dried food. It takes 20 to 40 hours. The biggest one that I've had so far, the longest one that I've had so far is 30 hours. I think it was 32 hours, and I was freeze drying some green chili, which is basically 80% water probably. So that took quite a while to freeze dry. But I just did a batch of chili mac, the Mountain House copycat recipe that I did. And that took 22 hours, I think. So it really depends on the batch. Candy you can do in a couple hours. I'm over the whole candy thing. I've done enough candy now, and I don't eat a lot of candy anyway, but I might do some and give it away. But and fruit, you're still looking at that 20 or so hour range. So it is something that takes a while, but you get used to it. You can get one, if you get an extra set of pans, you can get one batch ready while the other one's freeze drying, and just, do like me and run it nonstop for a week straight. All right, the next one here, and I believe this is the last con I have, is the learning curve. It's sort of that unknown factor, right? You see videos and you hear people talking about it, how great it is, but there's all the little things that you really don't understand about it. It looks pretty simple. You just put some food in the freeze dryer, close the door, and let it suck out all the water. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. But honestly, it's one of those times, sometimes you scare yourself into not doing something, and you do it and you find out that it's a lot easier than you thought it was going to be. And that's the case for one of these. It really is. I was almost too worried in the beginning. I was like, what am I doing wrong? This has got to be more complicated than this. What am I doing wrong? and it really isn't. I mean, it's really intuitive. You've got to make sure there's certain things on the machine, make sure your drain is closed, and make sure you do things right. Make sure you change the oil and maintenance and all that. But as far as the freeze drying process, it really is really simple. So, but like I said, it can be intimidating first because you just don't know all the stuff that you don't know. And it can kind of be easy to just talk yourself out of it and say, maybe later, I'll check this out later. But it really, really is super easy to use once you do a couple batches, and then, then it's like clockwork. All right, so the pros of using this, the pros, the reason that I chose to go ahead and bite the bullet and make this purchase, the first one I've got right here, which is the obvious one, right? Long shelf life, right? Freeze dryers can preserve food, a wide variety of foods, extending the shelf life. Freeze-dried foods retain most of their nutrients, flavor, and texture, making them a valuable addition to a prepper stockpile. You can freeze dry. There's a few things you can't, things that are like chocolate, you can't, things with high fat content. If you're doing hamburger, you got to make sure and drain off the grease. The green chili I made, I had to skim off the oils off the top because you don't want to have that in there. It doesn't freeze dry real well. But there are so many things you can freeze dry milk. You can freeze dry ice cream. You can freeze dry sour cream. You can freeze dry meat, which was it's not on my pros list here, but that is one of the pros. I want freeze dried meat to be able to put into meals. So there's just so many different things you can do with it. And you put it on the shelf and it lasts 20, 25 years. So if you forget something or something gets stuffed back behind something in the closet, you got 20 years on that. So it's fantastic. It gives me the ability to build up my food storage with a bunch of different things, with whole meals, with ingredients, and things that are going to last me for 20 years. So the next one I've got here, the next pro is versatility. Freeze dryers can handle various foods, including fruits, vegetables, meats, dairy products, and even complete meals, like I was just talking about. It makes it great for that, whether you're talking about a short-term emergency situation, you're talking about going camping, or you're talking about something that is completely Mad Max SHTF type situation. It just makes it, you've got so many different options, and that the fact that you don't have to worry so much about inventory and rotation, it makes it such a great product. And you can, this week alone, I've probably added 2 weeks to my long-term food storage. Now, granted, I'm giving some of it away to some members and friends and all that stuff, but I probably added 2 weeks just in this. So if you did, 2 batches strictly for preparedness, 2 batches a week, you could, in no time at all, get up to 3 months worth of food stored just from freeze-dried food. So just absolutely, absolutely fantastic as far as what you can do in it. It's just wonderful. The next one, and I think White Rabbit was talking about this earlier, the money saver. This is, you can actually make your money back on this, but I wouldn't go into it thinking that, okay, how long until I make my money back on this? Sort of like, I think about this when we had to replace our furnace. The furnace guy was in there talking me up like a used car salesman, telling me how much I'm going to save and all that. And I knew going into it that, yes, I may save money, or maybe replacing your windows, same type of thing. Yeah, you're going to save money, but that shouldn't be why you're doing it. You should be doing it for the preparedness reasons and all of that. But that's not to say you can't save a whole lot of money. Whether you're talking about leftovers that you have at night, instead of having to throw things away, or we give a lot of, our chickens are going to be unhappy now because we're not going to be giving them as much food. But you throw that on a pan, you put that pan in the freezer, and then once you fill up 4 pans, you just throw that in the dehydrator and run that whole batch, and you've got long-term food storage. Or you've got a meal to take with you camping or something like that. Brandon said Dale's joined the freeze-dried cult. Yeah, I have. I'll tell you what, this week, man, I've been playing, and I just absolutely love this damn thing. So the money saving, though, back to this. The money saving aspect of it is huge for me because, and I'm going to go through this with my chili mac recipe that I made, because you can save so much money if you're talking about the prepackaged long-term food. And I even sell that at the SHTF shop. But I would recommend doing your own before I would do that. But each of it has its place. So, but you can save so much money with this stuff. You're talking about leftovers. If you go to the store and there's like this picture right here, a huge deal on 5 pounds of hamburger, and you can get 10 of those, and you don't have the freezer space for all that, but you can freeze dry all that. You've got just a whole bunch of meat or ground beef or whatever it is, pork, chicken, whatever, that you can put in your food storage and have it there for whenever something happens for 20 years. So just a whole bunch of opportunities to save a lot of money. And then the fourth one here that I've got is the food is lightweight. So it's not necessarily as convenient as, boxed meals or canned goods that stack really nice and even, because you've got Mylar bags, but you can put them in plastic bins, which is what I'm going to start doing. But they're really lightweight. So you don't have to worry about, your shelves falling apart or anything like that. Once all that water's out of them, I think the chili mac that I made was 3.8 ounces for 2 cups of chili mac. It's just basically it's almost nothing. So it's really lightweight, really easy to store, as long as you've got a good organization plan, as long as you've got bins. Sorry, I'm reading Brandon's comment right here. I got sidetracked a little bit. Brandon said, another great money-saving point. I use the electricity to freeze dry, but only once, rather than running the chest freezer constantly. I've thought about that too, but we do have some things in the chest freezer that I just, it doesn't make sense at this point to turn that off. But you would, instead of freezing a whole bunch of meat and freezing all that stuff, you could use your freeze dryer to do that and use that electricity for that 1 or 2 or 3 batches or whatever, rather than having that freezer running constantly. Also, in a grid down situation, and I think that's the next one, or one of the next ones, is in a grid down situation, you don't have to worry about all that stuff spoiling in that freezer. So great point, Brandon. So lightweight, easy to store, just really convenient. The next one, and I sort of touched on this earlier, preserving food through freeze drying is an effective way to extend the shelf life and reduce food waste. So if you, and we run into this all the time. Brandon is the one that mentioned this to me the other day. He's talking about if you got canned foods that are just about to expire. I've talked about this 100 times about how we go through canned foods, not near as much as we used to, but we throw 20, 30, 40 cans of food away. Haven't done that in a long time. But instead of doing that, when you go through, you do your inventory and you see that you've got beans or you've got green beans, you got corn or anything like that that's, just about to go past its best by date, take that stuff and freeze dry it rather than throwing it away. So then you've got that, you still got that however many months worth of food storage you have, it's just in a different spot. And another thing with canned food, this sort of goes into the lightweight thing. Canned food, it gets pretty heavy. The more you have, we have reinforced shelves in our closet where we store the food because that stuff gets so heavy that it basically over time, it'll start drooping those shelves and just rip them off the wall. Long-term or freeze-dried food is not going to do that. So, but anything, eggs, meat, all those different things. The fruits are a big one too. You get bananas, and if you don't eat bananas within 3 or 4 days, they go bad. So you can freeze dry some of that. You've got strawberries, apples last a little while, but all those different fruits that if you don't get to them in time, you can still freeze dry it. Now, that being said, bananas, I think, work a little better the more ripe they are. So you don't want to put almost rotten bananas in there, but those are things that you get used to and that I will get used to over time. I've only had this for like 3 weeks, so I am no expert by any means. So the next one, and I think this is the most important one that's on the pros list, and this is the SHTF cooking options. The easier the meal is to prepare in a disaster, the better. If you're talking about if you're talking about an SHTF situation where it's been a grid down situation for weeks, you don't want to be giving off cooking smells. You don't want to be giving off light, all those different things. You won't be able to run your freeze dryer at that point. But those meals that you do have, all you're going to have to do is boil a couple cups of water. So you could do that with a camp stove. I mean, there's just a bunch of different options. You could even have that indoor, the Sterno. This Vesta Instafire right there runs on 3 cans of Sterno. And it, you could heat up something like this super easy. But all you have to do is just have a way to heat up a little bit of water. You think about having to cook an entire meal from scratch. That's going to be a little bit difficult. We've got the sun oven, which I absolutely love, but that you've got to take that outside. You've got to make the bread or put the meal together. This freeze dryer would be great for something in the sun oven as well. So you put something in a Dutch oven or one of the pots in there and just put it in the sun oven and let it heat up throughout the day. I'm going to have to try that now that I think about it. I was going to let Lisa use the freeze dryer this weekend, but I don't know anymore. I think I might be taking it over. She's been waiting patiently to be able to use it. But anyway, freeze dry, the SHTF cooking factor. I think that's one of the big ones here because it's a situation where you don't the less you have to do, the better your situation is going to be. The less signals you give out and all the different stuff, the better it's going to be. Along with this, the freeze dried food from an Harvest Right, your own home cooked meals, your family is going to love this far more than something from Legacy. Now, some of Legacy's food is pretty good, but it's not the same as that home cooking. All right. So at any rate, that's my, I know that probably sounded like a whole sales pitch right there. But I really do love the Harvest Right. I've got the link below in the description, and it is affiliate link, but I didn't go out and buy the Harvest Right so I could, bounce the affiliate link around. I bought the Harvest Right because I want to build up my long-term food storage, and I want to do it one step at a time. It's sort of like prepping in general. If you just start doing things, you do one thing here and one thing there and one thing there, all of a sudden you look back a year from now and you're just more prepared than you ever thought you were going to be. And that's sort of like this, it seems like it's going to be. After 3 weeks, I've got more food packaged up than I thought I would. So after a year, I'm going to be looking for different ways to organize all the Mylar bags and everything. And I'm going to have to start storing stuff in bigger bags rather than the smaller portions. And we're going to use the stuff in the kitchen. So things that we use on a regular basis, it's not going to necessarily get thrown in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, but just so many different things we can do with it. And I assume, I haven't done the math or anything like that, but I'm sure that I would make the money back that I spent on this in a year, 2 years. And it really depends on how much you put into your food storage. If you're a person that you've only got a couple months worth of food stored and you don't really put a lot into storing food, maybe this, it might not be the best option for you. But if you are somebody that has got shelves worth of food, you've got 6, 8, 12 months worth of food stored, you're always looking for deals at the grocery store, this definitely is something for you.